In this video, I'm going to go through the process of how I retouch my own photos. So to start out, I'm going to import the photo that I'm going to be using. I've already done the color grading for this inside Capture One. So now all that's left to do with this self-portrait is just to retouch it and kind of make me look good, basically. And then if you guys want to see the before and after of the color grade, this is the original photo, just the raw photo. And so as you can see, all I've done is pretty much add some contrast and some clarity to it, and that's really about it. So I'm just going to close out of that for right now. And now just a heads up with this, I am going to go through this kind of fast because this is just my editing process. So feel free to, rewind, rewatch if you need to, and do whatever you need to do to make sure you understand exactly what I'm doing. But to start out here, all I'm going to do is just press Ctrl J on our background to make a duplicate layer. Then I'm going to come up to filters and frequency separation, and I'll zoom in. And all I'm doing here is basically just getting rid of my skin texture on the right here and making sure I can see it on the left. And you just want to do it until you just about lose that skin texture. I think right about there is going to be okay for this. And I'll hit apply. And you can see that put it into low and high frequencies. And then I'm just going to select those two, press Ctrl G so that it creates a group with them. And I'm just going to rename it FS for frequency separation just to stay organized. So now I have my frequency separation. And then I'm just going to hit J on my keyboard to bring up my healing brush tool. And now with that selected and my high frequency selected, I'm going to go through and start changing the texture of some things. And mostly just getting rid of all like the blemishes on my face and any distracting elements that I don't want to be included in the photo. So I'm just going to go through this and basically get rid of all these. So with frequency separation, all I'm basically doing is selecting a part of the skin that doesn't have any blemishes on it, that's close to the blemish that I want to remove, and then I'm just painting over that blemish. And that's it. So we can go through and get rid of everything that I think is distracting or that doesn't aid to a perfect photo. And now with this, I do want to mention too, I'm only getting rid of the things that would only go away like on their own, like in a week or two. So for example, I'm not going to be getting rid of some of these moles on my neck and face just because those are actually a part of me and they're permanent on my face. So I don't actually want to get rid of those because they are a part of actually what makes me me and makes me unique. So therefore I don't want to get rid of those. So I think that is pretty much just about good there. So we can actually see the before and the after of that. And I'm liking how that's looking. Yeah, as you can see, we got rid of pretty much most of the blemishes that I wanted to get rid of. I don't really see any other ones that are really sticking out to me right now. So I think this is going to be good for right now. So now I'm going to go on to the low frequency, and I'm just using the same tool again, but now I'm just changing the color. So any sort of like red parts on my skin here, I'm just going to try and basically smooth out and get rid of so that it's a little bit more uniform and so that there's no like weird colors or anything on my skin. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through that. Basically, like I said, just doing the same exact thing, just kind of changing some of the colors now instead of just the texture. And then with this as well, we can try and actually get rid of the eye bags under here because I am apparently always tired. So we can just go ahead and paint those away real quick with the color. I'm not going to change that too much. I think that's actually fine because yeah, that gets rid of the majority of the eye bag, which I think I am okay with. I'm not going to change it too much there, but I'm just going to continue going through any other spots that need to be changed. And then one thing, I'm actually going to pop back into the high frequency real quick, just to get rid of this little eye vein right here, because I find it distracting from my eye. And I'll do the same with this one over here. And we'll just fix that real quick so we can see the before and after of that. I think that just kind of fixes up the eye and makes it a little less distracting. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And then I'll pop back into the low frequency and continue editing the color. All right. And I think that is going to be pretty good. Maybe just fix up my nose color a little bit here. I don't know if I like that, actually. I think we might just have to leave that as is. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so yeah. You can see the before and the after of everything we've done there. And you can see that's actually pretty good. I would almost consider this a completed look if we wanted to keep it that way. Just trying to make sure there's nothing else I missed here. Maybe get rid of a little bit of the redness over here. And then I think that is going to be pretty good. Looks like there's just a few other things I want to change the texture of over here, because I think they're a little distracting. And I mean, there has to come a point where I have to just accept it's going to be okay, because I could continue editing this for hours. But I think this is something I would consider good enough. But one other thing I'm considering doing with this is if you select the low frequency and you come to the freehand selection tool and you just select like a nice little area of skin, and you come up to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. If you bring this up, it actually smooths out the skin because it's blending the colors of everything, but it's keeping the texture. So I'm actually not sure if I want to do this. I'm actually gonna make sure I have a feather too. I just realized I didn't have a feather on there, so I'm just gonna bring the feather up quite a bit, a few hundred pixels. So I'll just select that. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And then I'll bring up the radius until I have something that I like. Let's see. I think right around there will be fine. Yeah, I think that looks good. And so we can do that to some of the other parts. So for example, it's actually pretty good at helping remove shine from skin. So if we come up and you can see, it just kind of mutes the shininess of the skin, which I do appreciate. So I'm just going to do that as well. Get rid of that selection by pressing Control D. I'll do the same thing to my nose here. Oh, our feather might be a little too big for this. I'll have to bring down the feather. There we go. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And then I'll just remove that shine a little bit and smooth out the skin. Then I can do the same thing over here, because you'll notice this is actually pretty good with the shadows as well. If you look at the shadows here, it really helps smooth them out and just gives it a little bit more of an appealing look. And then I'm pretty much just doing this on the areas where my skin is really, where my skin is really shiny, just to kind of smooth out that skin and make it look a little bit better and less harsh. So I think that is going to be pretty good. Yeah, I would consider that pretty good. So now I'm going to put that to close for right now. And next up, I'm going to do some dodging and burning. But I'm not going to use the dodge and burn tool. I'm actually just going to use curves, because that way I have more control over it. I'm going to bring that out of the group. Then I'm just going to bring this up a little bit. Hit Control J. And then this one I'm going to bring down. And I will rename these just to stay on track. So this one will be burn. And this one will be dodge. And now with these, I'm going to hold down Alt and then click Mask Layer, so that we have a mask on there without anything showing through. And I'll do that to both of them. So now, as you can see, if we enable or disable these layers, nothing changed because the mask isn't showing it at all. So then I'm just going to put these in another group, and then I'm just going to name this Eye, Dodge, and Burn. So now with that mask selected, I'm going to hit my brush tool. I'm going to make sure my flow is pretty low, around 10%. And then we're going to zoom right into my eye. Now I'm going to try and basically add contrast to the eye, because the viewer's eye is going to be drawn to contrast, and you always want your viewer to be like looking at the eye of whichever subject you have on your photo if you are doing a portrait like this. So I'm just going to try and add some contrast into the eye just by painting in, you know, some lighter areas here. Oh, I'm going to make sure my color over here is actually white, so it's actually showing through. And then I'm going to bring down the hardness too to 0. So now basically all I'm doing here is just painting in some of the major highlights of my eye here. And then what we'll do is we'll paint in some darker parts as well. So it really adds a bunch of contrast in here, and it really brings out the detail of the eye, which I really like. And then we can also brighten up the catch light a little bit. And then I'm just going to continue going through all of these here. And then I'm always trying to like kind of follow the direction of the eye. You'll probably hear in the background that I'm using a mouse right now. Sometimes I'll also use a drawing tablet, but for this sake, I am just doing a mouse. So I'm just kind of clicking and dragging. You can see how that is affecting it there. I think that's turning out pretty good. We can actually see it from here too. Yeah, I think that's just kind of adding some nice brightness to the eye, making it stand out a little bit more. Adding some more detail. And then sometimes I will also just do one quick little pass over the whites of the eye, just to make them stand out a little bit more as well. And then I'm just going to go over to the other eye as well and do the same thing on this eye again. And then I'm just using the bracket keys on my keyboard to change the brush size here. So I'm just going to be painting over everything here. Also, the reason I put the low flow on there is simply because when I'm painting over, I don't want it to be a really strong effect. So for example, if I have the flow all the way up to 100%, you can see you get a really strong effect there. And then that's kind of like the max you can do. So with the low flow, what it allows me to do is, so I can paint over it once like that, and it's just a really nice subtle effect, or I can continue painting over it, and it will make the effect a lot stronger in that area. So that is the reason you want to use flow when you're doing stuff like this. It just gives you a lot more control over exactly how your edits are going to appear. Bring that catch light up a little bit. And then we will do the same thing with the white of my eye. I would say that's pretty good for the dodging of our eye. So I think now we'll go into the burn. And now with burn, I'm basically doing the same thing, but now just with the darker parts of the image, like the shadows. All right, so now with burn selected, I'm just gonna come in and start painting over the darker parts here so that we can get that contrast and that extra detail within the eye. So I'm basically just doing the same exact thing, but now just with the darker parts. And then we can also just kind of darken the center part here. We'll do that for both the eyes too, because I tend to forget that. And then another thing we can do is add just a little bit of darkening just around the perimeter of the eye. And that will add just kind of a nice subtle contrast effect to it. So now you can see with my left eye there exactly how that looks. So you can see it really brings out the detail in the eye, and it really makes it so that when you're looking at the image as a whole, that your eyes are going to be drawn to my eyes or whoever is in your photo. I would say that's pretty good. So we'll go back into the burn, and then we will do my other eye as well. So I think that is going to be pretty good for this photo. I like how it's bringing out the detail. I like how it's kind of brightening everything up, and it's really making your eyes be drawn to my eyes. So I think that's pretty good. And then I'm just seeing right here too that I kind of want to get rid of the wrinkles and stuff on my shirt because I find them kind of distracting. At the very least, I'm going to get rid of this little part right here because I find it very distracting and I do not like it. So I'm just going to come in and make sure we get rid of that by using our frequency separation again. We'll have to come into low frequency as well and paint over that. So we just got rid of that. And then I'm also going to paint over some of the other larger wrinkles in my shirt there. And then if you guys want to know exactly how I'm kind of going about this, I actually do have a tutorial on how to remove wrinkles from shirts, which I will link to. And then for big areas like this, we can actually do that kind of like skin smoothing technique I showed you earlier. So we can just kind of select all of this here, come up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Oh, I'm on the high frequency, whoops. So we'll come into low frequency and then we'll do the same thing. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then we can just kind of smooth that out a little bit, just like that. So I'm just gonna go through and fix all this up real quick, and then I will show you the finished results. All right, so I've gone through with that. It's not perfect, and I could obviously still continue editing this for a while, but I think this is gonna be good enough. I feel like we've just gotten rid of, all the distracting parts of it, so I don't think it's gonna be too much of an issue. I'm not really liking how it turned out, but it's gonna be good enough for me for right now. So I'm gonna come back into my dodge and burn for my eyes now, and we're gonna continue editing that. I just wanted to make sure I got rid of those before I forgot. So now I'm gonna bring back my brush tool, and so now I'm gonna start working on stuff around the eye, such as my eyebrows and my eyelashes. So now I'm gonna re-enable those. And then with a really tiny brush size here, what I'm gonna do is basically just follow the lines of my eyelashes that are already there. And this is gonna darken the area around the eyelashes, and it's kind of gonna look like it's painting in other eyelashes. I might increase the flow just a little bit for this one. So you can see it's kind of darkening the area around it, and it's making it look like there are more eyelashes than there actually are, because you're basically just kind of painting in your own eyelashes here. So you can see kind of like the before and after of that, especially if we zoom out a little bit here. You can see it just kind of darkens the area around my eye, and again adds a little bit more contrast to that area, thus making it a little bit more appealing and where your eyes are going to be drawn to. And then we can do the exact same thing for my eyebrows here. So we'll just go in and paint in and make them a little bit darker, following the lines that are already there. That way everything looks super natural, and it's basically just kind of enhancing how things look, and we're not changing it too much or trying to make me look like a completely different person. I think the key for me, at least, when it comes to retouching portraits is just subtlety. Like, you really don't want to change it too much. You just kind of want to find ways to enhance what's already there and the features that you like in that person. So as you can see, I kind of darkened my eyebrow a little bit there, as well as the eyelashes. I think that's pretty good. I think we will go on to my other eye here. By the way, if you're wondering what this is over here, I used to have an eyebrow piercing. And so that is actually the scar left over from my eyebrow. If we wanted to, we could actually remove that just by coming into our frequency separation here. And then we can actually, paint over it like that. But I'm going to leave it in because it is a permanent part of me. And so I don't really want to get rid of it because it's one of my unique features, I suppose. But with that said, let's go on to the other eye here, and we will edit through this one as well. I'm going to bring back my brush tool by pressing B. We'll start out with the eyelashes here, and we'll just do the exact same thing that I did on the other side. Oh, and make sure that the layer is actually enabled so I can see what I'm doing. And now I will mention too, if I was editing someone who had like eyeliner or something, I would do the same thing here where I would take my burn tool and then darken that eyeliner a little bit. Because basically all retouching is that you are just acting as a sort of like makeup artist in post-production for your subject. So I think that's pretty good for the eye there. And then we'll come up and do the same thing with the eyebrow. And I feel like this is a good area where you can really see just how much we're actually painting in with that eyebrow, just to make it look a little bit better. And kind of filling it out a little bit more. Especially with me, since I am blonde, so my eyebrows don't really show through a whole lot. So it's kind of nice to kind of paint in a little bit more of that to make them a little bit more pronounced. So I think that is going to be where I'm going to stop for the eyes. I think that is pretty good. Adding some nice subtle effects, not changing too much. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the same thing. I'm going to do another dodge and burn layer here with curves. Bring that out of that. Going to adjust that. Press Ctrl J on there. And then bring this back down. And then we'll do the same thing. Hold down Alt or Option and hit Mask Layer on both of those there. And then we will group those. And now I'm going to call this face dodge and burn. So kind of like what I was saying before, where we are kind of acting as a makeup artist in post-production. What we're going to do with these is kind of do a sort of contouring effect on my face here. So if you actually look up contour guides on Google, you can actually see some stuff like this. So you can see basically what we're going to do is on the parts here that are going to be dark, we are going to use our burn tool. And then on the highlights here, we're actually going to put our dodge effect there. And this is the sort of guide I've always kind of used, especially on women. Unless they've already done like quite a bit of contouring, I usually won't affect it too much in post. But for me here, I wasn't wearing any makeup when I made this. So we're going to go through and kind of follow that guide and do the same thing for our photo. But what we're going to do here, I'm going to bring the flow all the way up to 100% and the hardness up to 100% as well. And then I will make sure I have my brush tool selected here. And I will increase the size of my brush here and paint in the areas where I would like more shadows to be pronounced, such as my jawline here. And then I'm actually going to do it just one line at a time. So just like this. So basically the reason I'm using the hard brush here is because after this, I'm going to blur these out so that you can't really see exactly like where they were or exactly what I did with them. And we'll go around the nose here. It's times like these where having a drawing tablet really helps out to get these kind of smoother lines. It's a lot harder when you're actually using a mouse, but it works out fine for me. I don't really see anywhere else where I would benefit from having, maybe just along my hairline over here and over here. And I think I'm going to call it there for that. Although I'm going to stick this one out just a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is come up to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur again. So as you can see, we're just going to blur these out until it's like really barely noticeable, but it's just enough to add an effect to it. And it's basically just going to accentuate the face shape a little bit more. So you can kind of see the effect of what we're going for there. So now, oh, I also just realized I never changed the names of these. So now we're going to do the same thing with the dodge tool. So we're just going to get a little bit of a bigger brush here. And we're going to start accentuating the parts that we really want to bring out for highlights. Maybe I'll put it on the forehead and see how that looks. I'm going to kind of follow the highlights that are already there. That's going to be too big. I'm going to get a smaller brush for that. Then we can try that and see how that looks. So we'll come up filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Then yeah, I think that actually looks pretty good. I'm actually going to blur this one out quite a bit more. I want it to be pretty subtle. So I think right around there. So you can see just with those, you kind of add a little bit more face shape and like structure to it. And I think it really just kind of adds a nice effect to it. And then one thing I'm noticing looking at it full screen here, I think I'm going to change just how strong this is. So this is actually why I use curves here. I can always come in and edit this exactly how I want it to be. So I'm just going to kind of play around with it until I get something that I like. I'm mostly looking at my jaw and the sides of my cheek there to see where I want to put it. So I think we'll keep it actually pretty subtle. I think right around there is going to be good. And we can play around with the highlights as well. So I think right around there is going to look good. Yeah, I think that's good. So it just adds some nice subtle effect to it, adds that face shape, really helps out with that. One other thing I would consider doing is maybe going in and smoothing out some of the highlights and shadows on my neck here. So I would come in, grab areas like that, come into blur, Gaussian blur, and smooth them out just a little bit, just to make them a little less contrasty. That way our eyes are going to be drawn to the areas with more contrast, thus being my face and my eyes. But with that, I would consider this a pretty much completed look. Obviously, we could go in and change some more things and spend a little bit more time making it look exactly right, but I think everything we've done here looks pretty good. So you can see the before and the after of everything that we've done here, and I think it looks pretty good. I would consider this a finished look, and I would be happy sending this to a client. So I think I'm going to call it there. So yeah, that was pretty much my entire retouching process in Affinity Photo. So that pretty much does it for this video. If you guys have a topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below, or if you have any questions. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day. See ya.